Let's go ahead and go over the plates of the skull here, or at least the bones of the skull. Start with the cranium. So here's our frontal bone right here. Here would be our two parietal bones. There is a temporal bone right here. And in the back, we have our occipital bone. Let's go for the bones of the face now. So right here on our cheeks, this is going to be our zygomatic bones. Right here, kind of like the upper part of the mouth, that's going to be our maxilla. Right back here, so we have our nasal septum, which is basically this kind of, it's a separation. And it's made up of the vomer, the top part of the vomer, and the perpendicular plate, which is the bottom part of the ethmoid bone. These little folds right in here, so these are nasal concha. So these will be our superior nasal concha at the top, and these will be the middle nasal concha. Let's go ahead and go over some things around the face right here. So, I also forgot two nasal bones and two lacrimal bones. So your lacrimal bones are kind of like your tear ducts. All right, so let's go ahead. We have this eye socket right here. So we call an eye socket either an orbital or an oculus. I think actually in your terms list, we're going to refer to orbital. If you can see, there's a hole right down here. So a hole below the eye socket is the infraorbital foramen, because we know foramen's a hole, right? What else back here? So if we can kind of see, way in the back, there's a hole right here.
Oh, I see it.
Yeah, so that's going to be your optic canal. So this is where your cranial nerve number 2, which is the nerve that deals with eyesight, goes through. I also forgot one more here. It's very hard to see, but kind of right here on the temple area, this is going to be the sphenoid bone. The sphenoid bone is that kind of butterfly-looking one that's embedded in the skull. Let's let's go over our sutures. How about, since we have them right here? So we have sutures. Those are immovable plates of the skull. This one right here. This would be our coronal suture, our sagittal suture, our squamous suture, and our lambdoid suture. Open this guy up.
Oh, it's got the hooks.
All right. So let's look at the skull now. So the ethmoid bone would be right up in here. This is the crista galli of the ethmoid bone, the rooster crest, and this would be the cribiform plate. Right here, we have the part of the sphenoid. So this would be the sella turcica, the Turkish saddle. That's where your pituitary gland sits. Let's go ahead, and what else do we miss here? Let's go over the mandible. There's a lot of things on the mandible here. So here's a mandible. That's our jaw. We would have the mandibular condyles right here. So the rolling surfaces. Here would be this point. This is going to be like a point on a crown. So this would be the coronoid process. Right here, kind of line with the teeth kind of go into the skull. That's going to be the alveolar line or the alveolar processes. What else am I missing? Oh, a couple of holes here. So if you remember back into the first chapter when we went over the different regions of the body, hopefully you remember that your chin is called your mentis. So these holes in the chin would be the mental foramen. Flip it over on the back here, and we have a couple other holes here in our mandible. These would be our mandibular foramen. I'm not sure if you need to know this, but also remember we have an indentation right here. This would be the mandibular notch. Good? All right, I think that's more or less what we need to know here. Let's go ahead and flip over to the bottom here. So there's a bunch of holes. There's a bunch of foramen that we need to go over, right? You know what this big one right here in the bottom of the occipital bone is called?
Cranial?
Not cranial. It would be the magnum foramen.
Okay.
Excuse me, the foramen magnum. What else do we have here? So back here, this hole, this jagged-looking hole, that is where your jugular goes in. So jagged hole, jugular foramen. The hole just in front of it, right here, this would be your carotid canal. So this is where your carotid artery goes into. You can see a couple of oval-shaped holes right here. These are called the foramen ovale. This is going to be actually on your sphenoid bone. So if we look at our sphenoid, you can see a couple of oval holes right here and here. That's the same holes right here. So kind of get how all these bones fit together in three-dimensional space. I think that's pretty much all we need to know in the holes. We can go back and check the skull here in the terms list in just a bit. But that's all I got for you.